am so happy to see this room so full. As a former vice chair and secretary of this county party, I've seen when this room, might have 4 or 5 people in it, but we have unprecedented levels of turnout, and it's because of the hard work of people like Kathy and our new and former group of the executive committee that are making it happen. And I know that that's a really thankless job, so if you guys could join me in thanking everybody for doing this. My name is William, and I think I know most of you in this room, and for those of you who don't, I look forward to getting to know you. I am your Democratic candidate for Ward 2 here in Broomfield. I grew up here, and I love this community, and it provided me with a lot of opportunities that a lot of kids who had my childhood wouldn't necessarily have had. I grew up, my father left when I was very young. My mother was not the most reliable person in the world. I put myself through college, and if it weren't for people, even in this room, I don't know if I would have graduated high school. I don't know if I would have made it. And this community provided me with opportunities that I wouldn't have had elsewhere. And I was lucky. There's a lot of people who had my background that never would have made it and who don't make it, even in our community. We have a 7% child poverty rate here in Broomfield, and I know that sounds really low, but that's a lot of kids we're talking about. And that's why I'm running, because I want all of those kids to have those same opportunities. A big thing, I just purchased my first home about 1.5 years ago, and it was really, really hard to find a starter home in this area, where I grew up. And that would be one of my top priorities, is to finally use our city council and city government to prioritize affordable housing in a meaningful way. People like Eileen, who have been champions on this issue, and Devin, who have been working so hard, and Stan, to get an affordable housing advisory committee going so that we can talk about maybe holding developers accountable so that they have to build a variety of price points instead of just very expensive, $500,000 and $600,000 homes. So what I would like to do is I would like to properly fund and staff that Broomfield Housing Authority so that we can get some real results. Another thing I'd like to prioritize is our small businesses. I know how hard it is for local business owners to make it. We give a lot of big incentives to large companies to come here. We just got Crocs to come here and open a headquarters, which is great. Lots of high-paying jobs, lots of tax revenue. I'm glad they're here. The guy that wants to open a brewery or a restaurant or any kind of local business does not get that same help from the city necessarily. And I would like to see our county prioritize those small businesses in the same way that they prioritize getting those big headquarters to move here. Another priority that I want to work on is, of course, protecting our open space, air, and water. I've been here since I grew up here. I've seen the Broomfield voters speak 3 times about how they feel about residential drilling. We've been pretty clear. And we don't want large drilling operations near homes. And with the hard work of Matt Gray and Casey Becker and so many good people in the legislature, we finally have the tools to do it. And I will work very hard with Guyleen and hopefully Heidi here and everybody to utilize that power we have to protect our air and our water and our public health, and even maybe, I know our city council hasn't had the guts to do it before, but try to move towards 100% renewable energy. We haven't. The last thing that I would like to work on, which is deeply personal to me, would be early childhood education. As I said, there's a lot of kids in poverty. We are a city and a county, which uniquely positions us to do some big things that regular cities, can't do. Denver, which is a city and a county, has had a guaranteed preschool program since 2003. Every kid in Denver who wants to go to preschool will get a subsidy so that they can attend preschool. We have 5 school districts here in Broomfield, and not all of them help low-income kids get into preschool and early childhood education. And a lot of private schools don't have the resources to help kids either. And I would like to see the county step in and fill that void so that every kid in Broomfield and every family can afford it. It's not right that kids who are struggling already don't get that head start with early childhood education. So those are kind of my top priorities. I'm going to open it up for questions here, and Hibby.
I am a resident in Ward 2 and a recent resident of Ward 2, and I'm really deeply concerned about the proposed plan for the Jefferson Parkway and running across the eastern edge of Rocky Flats.
Yeah.
To me, it's just absolute folly, not just because of the issue of air quality during construction and people living downwind and who knows what they're going to dig up, but the fact that that parkway is really going nowhere. And as far as I can tell, it's never going to be hooked up to anything like a major highway on either end. And I just want to know what your thoughts and your awareness is about that issue.
That project should not go forward on Indiana Street as it's being proposed. I don't think that there is any reason to risk digging up. For those of you who don't know and aren't in Ward 2, this is a really, really pertinent issue to a lot of folks in Ward 2. There is plutonium around Rocky Flats. Rocky Flats was a place where they used to make nuclear trigger devices, and they didn't clean it up right, and they dumped it all into the soil, and it's been saturating, and now it's finally covered up, and there's a proposal to run a tollway through a piece of Rocky Flats, not directly near the facility, but a piece of Rocky Flats where studies have shown there are still active pieces, and there will be for all of our lifetimes, times 100 or 1,000 of plutonium that are still active. And if we dig those things up, there's a potential they could get in the air and cause real public harm. I have family members that actually worked at Rocky Flats way, way back in the day. Well, had family members, and they all died of cancer. There were 2 of them. And I don't think there's any reason that we should be risking our public health for a tollway. I think that if they want to run that road, they need to do it far away from that soil. And I think a majority of people on council believe that too.
Yes.
Anybody else? Kenny?
Yeah, so I'm also a Christian in your word as well too. I'm coming around living here for the past full year at Broomfield. My question to you is, a lot of cities are trying to balance protect public lands, but also facing a shortage of housing. A lot of folks like me in Boulder came here to live here because I was Boulder anymore. So my question is, how would you balance that? Would you balance public lands and I guess maybe
It's a really hard question, right? Because especially in Ward 2, where we don't necessarily have the same access to public trails and public lands like the rest of the city. We don't. We do not have the same mileage of trails. It's a lot denser. The open space is less. So for those of you who don't know, the comprehensive plan has a goal of 40% open space, and that includes open space, front yards, any kind of open land, because they want the community to be diverse. I support that requirement, but I think what that means is in the available lands that we have, we need to think smaller. We need more condos, we need more apartments, we need more units, because we are in a crisis of affordable housing. Young people like us, it is very, very, very hard to afford anything in this entire area. And the only way we can do it is if people are building smaller units that are preferably owner-occupied in the lands that we have, because the lands that we have are at a premium. Developers aren't struggling. We're not at a shortage of developers wanting to develop. We're going to be at a point where we're at a shortage of lands to develop, and I think the lands we do have, we need to treat as a resource and prioritize in the right way. And I still think we need to have our open spaces, because that's why we all live here. It's a beautiful place to live. But I think we need to hold developers to a higher standard than we currently are.
Going along those lines, you can have units, but then you have to figure out a place to pull the cars. What are your thoughts on transportation? Because of increased density, you can double up air transportation with just cars.
I totally agree. So I spent a year working at a public-private partnership that tried to create creative ways of funding our roads and getting around our antiquated gas tax that is helping underfund our roads because of Tabor and all these things. So it's a really, really tricky problem, because in places like Arista in Ward 2, I don't know if anyone lives in Arista, but it was developed really densely, but it was also developed underparked, and we didn't build enough parking, and now people have to walk 4 or 5 blocks just to get to their home from their cars, which is not the solution. So I think developers need to build parking garages when they build high rises. I think that's something that they need to consider doing, like any other dense area. I also think that we need to get funding for the mass transit that we have paid for. Broomfield voters in here, everybody is paid for fast tracks. We haven't gotten any light rail up here, and I think that's absurd. We are subsidizing South Denver and the rest of the metro area, and we're not getting anything for it. We have good rapid bus transit. A couple options I would think about so people weren't dependent on their cars. I think the city and county could partner with Uber or Lyft to try to get people to those regional transit organizations, or like the regional transit stops, like the bus stop on US 36, because that last mile and that first mile are the hardest ones to fill. The other thing, I think we could use, better access to bike trails to get to those places. In Ward 2 especially, there's not a great way to bike to those bus stops without having to ride along the side of 120th or something, and it's really dangerous. I know you live near me, and it's really not a great place to bike. So, those would be some ideas, but we are in a pinch because of Tabor and because of a lack of state funding. And I think we just need to be really, really creative and innovative at how to address that shortfall. Anybody else? One last thing, my campaign kickoff, I think these things have been floating around the room, is this Sunday. My good friend, Congressman Neguse, is headlining it. We have about 130 RSVPs, and we'll have kegs of local craft beer. I think the entire, most of the city council will even be there at this point, Democrats and Republicans alike. And it'll be a really good time. And I'd love for you guys to come. If you haven't heard Congressman Neguse speak, he's amazing, and you should really try to make it. I know a lot of candidates for races up and down the ticket are also coming, but it's this Sunday at the Crescent Grange, and it's on those flyers that are all around from 4:30 to 6, and I'd love if you guys could all attend. If everybody who attends chips in $50 to the campaign, I will have the entire campaign funded. And as you guys know, these local elections are really, really expensive, especially with big industry that wants to buy our city council. And the only way that people like me and people like Heidi and Jean and Lori can win and stand this year, is if people like you stand up and help us out. And if you guys come, bring what you can. I'd love to have you there, and let's win this race. Thank you.